I'm not looking for a 7-figure lifestyle. I don't think that's a popular thing that people talk about, but I don't want a 7-figure lifestyle. And I don't want a big company that's churning out things. That's not my dream. So I had to trust myself to be okay with all of that stuff. And I also had to, you and I had many talks about the sunk cost fallacy of like, just because you've put a lot of time into it doesn't mean you should keep doing it. So it was all of this. I would say a lot of our coaching was around letting go of shit and decluttering shit and redefining what it would look like in the future. And I couldn't do that by myself. I really needed a thought partner with that.
Well, hey, friend, and welcome back to the Driven Woman Entrepreneur Podcast. I'm really excited to share today's client success story interview with my client, Jen Liddy, because Jen is not in my target market. That's right. She hired me because of the personal qualities, gifts, and traits that I possess, not because of my specific expertise in a niche that she's part of. You know, sometimes we need someone who has a specific narrow range of expertise because that's the thing we need. But other times we want someone who can match our intellectual pace and energy, who we trust, who we respect, and who we know will help us get unblocked and back into momentum better than any course, group program, or trying to figure it out on our own. I'm excited to share the work we did together and what Jen had to say about it. So let's get right to it, shall we? I start with a getting started questionnaire. So we set expectations and decide on what outcomes we're going for from the start. And here's what you said. I want to decide, streamline, and take action. I want a clear description of who I work with so I can build my messaging and SEO content around that. I want to be known as the go-to person in my field and position myself as an expert and specialist with confidence and clarity. It was an interesting challenge for me to work with you for a couple of reasons. First of all, we already know each other. We met probably several years ago now and had worked together previously and through a marketing program that you co-facilitated. And I was one of the people in that group. But also you don't have ADHD and most of my clients do. So I was kind of fascinated when your name popped up on my consultation calendar because I thought, first of all, I was delighted. I would love to work with you. But then I thought, she doesn't even have ADHD. So before we jump into exactly what we created and what that felt like, why me?
Yeah, the ADHD completely came out of the equation for me because I knew that whether I had ADHD or not, you still could help me. What I was looking for was a thought partner to help me think more creatively. And in my experience with you, you always did a really good job of like mirroring back or taking an idea and expanding on it. And I know you're personally an idea machine.
I am.
And I never really think of that as my strength, especially when it comes to myself. I wanted to be mentored and partnered with somebody, but I didn't necessarily want to be coached. I didn't want I'm 50 friggin' 3 years old. I didn't want somebody to ask me, why do you think you're doing that? And what do you think is underneath? Like, I've already done all of that work. I have a therapist, I have healers, I do energy work. Like, I wanted somebody who was really just going to laser focus on my business. I had done a lot of, over the previous 18 months, I had done a lot of healing work around other areas of my life, like some family stuff came up, some personal health stuff came up. So I just wanted somebody who, and this is the part of your messaging that I was looking for, is the no BS part. So I knew that you could help me whether I had ADHD or not. And it just was like, I did not want to be led around by the nose trying to figure shit out. I wanted a cortisone shot to fix what was going on in my business. And I didn't want to put it on somebody else, but I definitely wanted a partner to get through that with me.
This is really hard to find because we're all being told in terms of marketing that you're either a coach or you're a consultant or you're a strategist. And you kind of are expected to choose a lane. I am all of those things.
That's true. Mm-hmm.
And it's like what the client needs at that given time and how to sort of help them untangle their knots and give them options. But I've had some of the same experiences that you've had, Jen, in that when you hire many coaches, they ask you a lot of questions.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the standard in coaching. You're supposed to ask
Sure.
really good questions that sort of get the wisdom out of the client, their own inner wisdom. But sometimes that doesn't really help because we all have biases and blind spots that
Mm-hmm.
we can't recognize. You know the expression, you can't read the label from inside the jar.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So coaching can be the exact right methodology at different times in our journey. At other times, it's more like consulting where I'm literally giving
Yes.
you advice. Sometimes I'm a strategic thought partner, and sometimes I'm like a sounding board while you verbally process things. And then my pattern recognition brain says, well, it sounds like this, 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 this. And then you're like, yes, and then we go through another round in the Voxer. I think that was one of the things that you really made such good use of during our work together is the Voxer coaching, because sometimes you just needed to download something and then hear how it landed on my ears so you could continue iterating it. Not everybody takes advantage of that. I think you took exceptional advantage of it because it really served you. And I love doing that anyway, because I'm a quick thinker. I can get right to the point. And I think that was one of the things you were looking for the most. Not to be told what to do, not to be crammed into somebody's proven system.
Right. That was another thing. Yes. Yes. So I hope that people listening don't think I am poo-pooing coaching. Coaching is vital, and I have been coached a lot, but just where I am and what I knew I needed in my business, like I'm really highly self-aware at this point and knew that something needed to change, but I just really needed that partnership. And so being able to verbally process over Voxer. And the other thing that was always very cool was you were very generous in your, in your thoughtful responses, but always like, here's a resource that might help you. And so it just helped me move along so much faster than just waiting for our next time when we were going to see each other face to face.
I think most people who are action takers and are at that point where they're like, I have worked way too frickin' hard to be feeling this stuck. I just need to get in momentum and start moving forward. I think that's one of the things that was so fun about working with you, Jen, is that once you got clarity, you were like, bam, out the gate with it. And I think what a lot of people don't realize is when you're working with someone every week, the action happens between the calls. During the coaching calls, we're figuring some things out, we're examining things, we're processing things, we're making decisions. But then in between, you were just taking a fuck ton of action every single week. And then when the action was like, okay, I don't feel like I have 100% clarity on this. I don't know if I need to go left or right. Then you'd shoot out a Voxer message. We'd go back and forth on it. And you'd be like, okay, now I got it. And then you'd take more action. And I think being able to see people benefit from the thought partnership and implement so consistently. And I think it's the deliverables too. Like when people say a great coaching outcome is I have more clarity, that's not a great outcome in my book. That's like, okay, good for you. And what are you going to do with it? And you created a lot of stuff.
The clarity kept coming in waves. So I want people to understand that clarity isn't a straight shot. It was very zigzaggy for me. It started right. I'm thinking back to the beginning conversations that we had. And a lot of those beginning conversations were like, I'm hearing you say you don't want this anymore. And you don't want to work with this type of entrepreneur anymore. And you don't want to feel like this anymore. And so a lot of it was the clarity of like, almost like permission giving for me to let go of that stuff. So let me give some clarity here for a listener who is like, well, what the hell is she doing? So I at that point, I had been working in the content marketing lane of the online business world for a long time. And I had a membership. I had one-to-one clients. I had a small group program. I had done all of the things and none of them felt right. And it also I had an email list that is very, very engaged and reads my stuff, but they don't buy. And I knew that people love what I have to say and they read my stuff and they like it. But for some reason, they weren't compelled to buy anything or work with me. And it just felt like this struggle. So I really wanted help in knowing, okay, if these are not the right people on my list, I don't want to attract more of them because I have a business and I want to make money. Who is it? And what does my messaging have to be? So I really went back to this very foundational question of who do I want to work with? And now who I had been attracting and the lead magnet that I had out there was attracting more newbie entrepreneurs who just really aren't ready to spend money on content because they really believe if they just cobble something together, they can make it work for them. So one of our first conversations was, I'm hearing you say you don't want to work with new entrepreneurs anymore. You want them to be in business 3 to 5 years. And we just established that. And it was like, yes, that's it. And then we could start reverse engineering from there when I knew, okay, who it was. But this zigzaggy journey then was like, okay, well, what lane of content? Because I'm not making a hard left into something else. I'm still going to be talking about copy and content. I mean, I played around. Do I want to be a copywriter? Is that how I want to position myself? Do I want to work with wellness professionals? Do I want to work with academics? Because the people that I was describing, you and I just kept playing around with who is that person. And at one point I had gotten a new client came to me and she had written a book. She didn't know how to use it. She didn't know how to market it. And I was like, oh, it's authors. That's who I want to work with. And it made all the sense in the world on paper. I'm a book nerd. I'm a word nerd. This is like right up my alley.
You're a former teacher. You have a couple of master's degrees.
Right.
I mean,
that's right. It all made sense on paper. So I took the entire month of November, speaking of taking action, and I did target market research with these people. I spoke to 40 different people, experts already in the field, people who are authors, people who are thinking about like being an author. And I got to the end of it and I was like, no, I don't want to go in and learn publishing. It's like a whole new realm. I already have a lot of knowledge. I don't want to do something where I have to start over again. And honestly, I didn't spend 1 minute feeling bad about having those 40 conversations because all they did was, again, create incredible clarity. Like that's a no. Like that's just a no now for me. It's not anything more I need to waste my time on. Right.
And that's exceptional about you, Jen. I just want to pump the brakes for a second. I think that's really exceptional about you. And I think it's evidence of all the personal growth work that you've done. And this is not how a newbie business owner thinks. And to be clear, this current iteration of your business is the current iteration of this business. You have been a serial entrepreneur. You've had several businesses. And what we were going for this time was, I'm in my 50s. I want to spend more time outside of work. I don't want it to consume my life. I have a teenage son who's going to be grown and flown soon enough. I want to have more time for him. I want to have more time for my marriage. We're going to be empty nesters in a minute. And I don't want to keep building something that I end up wanting
to suck the life out of me.
Well, that's either going to suck the life out of you, and then you're going to have to burn out to save yourself. And newbies, to hear you say, I had 40, I remember this so well. We had these conversations. We spent a couple coaching calls getting this clarity. I felt like, okay, she's got her light bulb moment. She's off to the races. You went at it like a beaver building a dam. I was like, I couldn't believe how many people you interviewed. And then you're like, you know what? It's not authors. Now, if you weren't so experienced, if you weren't so committed to the entrepreneurial lifestyle and to finally crafting and honing the business that you wouldn't want to run away from. It didn't feel like a loss. It didn't feel like a fail. It didn't feel like, oh, for fuck's sake, here we go again. You were like, I am crystal clear based on evidence, based on data. You did hardcore market research, and then you gave yourself permission to say, pass. I think that's really important.
Yeah. And it would have been, you're right that it would have been hard at another stage, an earlier stage of my business, because I would have said something like, oh, I've put so much time in, that sunk cost
Yes.
fallacy that we sometimes talk about. Or maybe I'm just a flake and I don't want to do the work. Or maybe like I would have talked myself maybe into it. You know, you can do this, you can learn this, but it was interesting and I learned a ton. But at the end, I was like, no, I don't want to spend my 50s scrapping my way through trying to figure out Amazon, publishing, all of that shit that I knew it was going to be a shitstorm. And I really had to sit and think like I have years of experience teaching online entrepreneurs how to create content and market themselves. And the other thing is we were getting to the end of 2023. Shit was changing online. Shit is still changing online. People, business is different now. And I'm like, if I know everything about online business and what has been done, and I know how disenchanted people are as audiences and clients, and we're going to have to shift that. I am for sure not going to learn how to do it with authors and publishing on top of it. So it was really more of an energetic decision that you're right. I don't think like if I had been less mature in my business, I would have trusted myself. And that is a thing you and I talked about all the time, was trusting myself, like trusting myself. And this other, I'm going to go back to this sunk cost thing.
Please
Because
do. It's huge.
So just to give people a background, I used to be a high school teacher. Then I was a college professor. And then I left academia to open a brick and mortar fitness studio with 2 business partners. So I say I learned how to do business like from inside the dumpster fire itself. And I didn't have an MBA and I felt like a loser a lot of the time. And I burned out several times. When I left that brick and mortar business, I started an online accountability coaching business, then a business development business. And then I stepped into content creation right at the end of 2019 when 2020 was about to hit and everybody needed content. Mm-hmm. And I had my 2 most successful years where I finally crossed the 6-figure threshold, which for being a teacher was such an important thing to me. And I remember like looking at the number, like, okay, I did it. I made the $150,000 and I don't feel one bit of joy about it. I don't feel one, it didn't change anything for me because I was still burned out. And then I was like, well, I just need to work harder. I just need to do more. So I spent 2021, 22 really just in burnout, doing things that weren't fitting for me. So by the time I hired you in 2023, I knew that there were just more. I don't want to say like money wasn't important. Money is obviously important, but I wanted to stop. I wanted to, as you always say, right size my business and stop doing what other people in my industry are doing just because they're doing it. And so again, this trust of like, what's my energy? What's my lifestyle? What are mine? I don't need a 7-figure business. I'm not looking for a 7-figure lifestyle. I don't think that's a popular thing that people talk about, but I don't want a 7-figure lifestyle. And I don't want a big company that's churning out things. That's not my dream. So I had to trust myself to be okay with all of that stuff. And I also you and I had many talks about the sunk cost fallacy of like, just because you've put a lot of time into it doesn't mean you should keep doing it. So it was all of this. I would say a lot of our coaching was around letting go of shit and decluttering shit and redefining what it would look like in the future. And I couldn't do that by myself. I really needed a thought partner with that.
I don't honestly know that anyone can do it by themselves because as women of a certain age, we have been culturally conditioned for decades to follow the leader, stay with the herd, seek safety by doing what everyone is doing, seek permission.
Right.
I have been using this expression lately, seek permission, like life is one big game of Mother May I. And if you feel like doing something that other people aren't doing, it usually causes a lot of doubts and uncertainty. Yeah. And women are not conditioned to trust themselves and to do what feels good and right and necessary to them. So what ends up happening is that we expend a tremendous amount of time, energy, effort. We build something that is solidly in our zone of excellence, meaning we have the skills, we've put in the
Yeah.
time, we are known for it, we're good at it. It gives us
Mhm.
some level of financial and emotional reward, but it's not ideally suited to us. And to be able to unpack that and literally start casting it off like you're
Yeah.
downsizing. And then what is a right size business? Do you want to work with a team of people? Do you want to manage people? Do you want to have a big ad spend? Do you want to be on the hamster wheel of scaling and scaling and scale? I mean, sooner or later, it's going to go bust. All of these types of schemes do. But like, is that going to give you the lifestyle that you want? Because your life shouldn't be all business. Your business should be a piece of your life. It should support your life, but it shouldn't take over your life. And unfortunately, the way online business is being taught, and most of us are just swallowing without even seeing what it tastes like, that's where we end up. I just cannot believe the number of women that are talking about being burned out right now.
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
it's sort of the inevitable result of not trusting ourselves and indulging in the sunk cost fallacy. I've spent
Yeah.
$20,000. I've spent 5 years. I've got all
Yes.
these people on my list, and now I don't want to serve that group of people anymore. You
Yep.
have permission to do what's right for you. And that
Yep.
takes time.
And a little bit of confidence. It took confidence for me to get to the end of 40 different kinds of conversations that people gave me their time and I took my time and I asked a lot of questions, and to get to the end of that and be like, that was really good, but it's not it. And to not get frustrated with myself at that
Or
moment.
guilty that you wasted people's time or
Yep.
wasted your
Yep.
time. Or I had a moment of
Yeah.
doubt there. I had a moment of doubt there because it seemed like you were so, what I like to say, focus, fired up, and flame retardant. You were like in it to win it. You were, and I thought, wow, this is going really well. She's really excited. She's getting all the market research. She's got her offers lined up. And I do want to talk about how you came to the point where you decided on your offers and your price points and
Yeah.
all that. But,
Yep.
and then it was like, and I'm not going to do that. And I was like,
Yeah.
ooh. Now I had a moment where I thought, well, now what? Because
What?
now
No, I
what?
get it. I get
But
it.
it was such a turning point because that moment of doubt, I was not doubting you, Jen. I
Mhm.
was doubting that I was meeting your needs because we were
Oh.
halfway through and you'd spent all this time and energy doing something that hadn't really moved you towards the goals that we talked about. And I had one of
Well,
those
this is
moments like, uh-oh,
interesting.
now what are we going to do?
I think listeners are going to love to hear that from you. I think that as coaches and consultants and service providers, we often doubt ourselves, especially if our clients aren't like getting the end result. And I have a client who, she's a retainer client of mine, and she really loves to take her time, and she's pivoted a few times, and she's a retainer client. So sometimes I'm like, God, I'm just not meeting her needs. She must think I'm just not doing enough. And every time we get on a call, she's like, I'm so grateful for you. I love having all of this space to figure it out. I love how you pull shit out of my head and make me see my entire messaging differently. And so I think that I would guarantee, well, I first of all never doubted you. And I knew it was my process. I was grateful to have you along for the ride with me. And I never would have blamed you if at the end I didn't get results. And I want to talk about that because it's
Mm,
interesting. But I do think back to other programs I've been in and coaches I've worked with, and I've always achieved some goal. It may not have been, the like the be all and end. Like it's never tied up in a bow at the end of any
mm-mm.
program. Because you're always iterating on what you've learned or taken away, and then you're implementing it. And sometimes I've left programs and I've been like, why did I do that program? That just doesn't even seem like, why the fuck did I choose to work with that person? Or why the fuck did I choose to do that? But at the end, and I will tell you for some of those problems, for some of those programs, it's been like a year later and I'm like, oh, that's why I had to do it.
Mm.
Or, oh, because I don't want to do it that way anymore. I think I we take something from every experience that we have. And if anybody out there is thinking like it's your coach's job to tie it all up in a bow for you, then you're like, you have the wrong expectation about working with somebody.
I really appreciate you saying that, because I think people who take themselves seriously, who take their work seriously, who
Yeah.
are
Yeah.
you're very goal oriented. And it's like, okay, I want something measurable. It's one of the reasons
Sure.
why I decided to stop being a therapist
Yeah.
and become a coach, because so much of the progress, so much of the results with therapy are intangible. And what's often true is that I would witness people growing, changing, and then they would either say, I don't know, I don't really feel like anything's happening here. Or they would more likely attribute it to some movie they saw or some, I'm just like, I'm like, bitch, I have literally walked you step by
Right.
step.
No kidding.
But it is
No
an
kidding.
interesting thing to think about, because setting expectations and continuing to check in as we go along, it's a good way to not let things get completely lost and off the rails. But you're 100% right. It is a personal commitment to our own development and
Yeah.
success that we really can't outsource to someone else, even someone we're paying.
Yeah. Yeah. And I struggle with that because the work that I do is kind of like yours. It's iterative. It can be slow. Finding somebody's like exact right message, who they want to work with, how they like, that's the work I do. And some people can get there fast and some people want to meander. And so to speak to your question about offers,
Mm-hmm.
well, I knew that the offers I never wanted to do at this point in my life, like I don't want a membership. So all of the things that people tell you to do to scale, I'm just not interested in right
Mm-hmm.
now. Just where I am in my life and energy and my needs. I don't want a membership. I've already done that. I don't want a mastermind. I love teaching a workshop, but I just want to be in and out. And I realized I love a one-off session with somebody. Do you have, because I find it very hard these days to be able to get somebody's brain on something because everybody's either scaling or has a group program or it's some evergreen thing or they're not even showing up for it or they have somebody else showing up for it. Like I usually just need an hour of someone else's brain and experience and attention. And I really loved doing these one-off sessions that I was practicing with. And I can get a lot of success for somebody. We can get pretty far in an hour.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that was trusting myself, right? Like we come on cold. I don't know what we're going to talk about, but I have so much experience and a natural talent that we can get you pretty far. So I was like, okay, that's an offer that I want to have the one-off strategy session.
And you were clear about that the whole time. And we should talk about, before we get too much further, when you decided you weren't going to work with authors anymore, who you decided you were going to work with. But one thing you were clear from the beginning, and I tested you in a lot of different ways because I know that it's just not something that other coaches, consultants, or strategists are really encouraging people to do, is one-off sessions. In fact, I think there's a lot of people who think, well, that's not a leveraged offer.
Scalable.
But
Yes.
you didn't want to build your whole business around this. We created an offer suite, but you wanted to retain that as one way to work with you that was not just good for people who either wanted to kick the tires and not make a big investment of money and time, or who really just had a very specific thing that could be knocked out of the park in an hour. But you also wanted to do it because you enjoy doing that kind of work, not exclusively, but it's like a SWAT mission. You get in, you get out, you see what needs to be done, you do it, and then you get out of there. And there's no obligation, there's no follow-up, there's no
there's no deliverable, there's no homework.
It's clean.
Coaches, and I don't know that a consultant feels the same way, but when I have a retainer client, I'm carrying them with me all the time, just like you are, right? Like you were checking in with me. You're thinking about me. You see a resource. You think, oh, Jen really could use that. And I do the same. All of us do those things for our clients when we're on a retainer with them. And it's invisible work, but it really is still energetic
It's emotional
work.
labor. To be sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And it's very hard for a client to understand that and understand the value of that. But that's what I do with a retainer client. Now,
Mhm.
one off client, you come in, I don't read anything before, I don't read anything after. But for that entire hour, I am 1000%, my brain is with you. And then I'm released from it. And that is an energetic release that I
Mhm.
really enjoy. So I knew there was going to be the one-off sessions, and I knew that I was going to have probably be able to serve 3 or 4 retainer clients
Mhm.
a month. Those clients, they get feedback every week. I check in with them every week. I see them 3 times a month. Like, so there's a lot there. I can really at this point do 3 or 4 of them. But I wanted to and I'll talk about this because you don't even know this yet. I wanted an offer that I thought was the mid-size offer price wise, but
Mhm.
it's actually turned out to be a higher price offer, but a shorter time offer.
Mm.
So I've got the one-off
Mhm.
sessions, and then I've got the retainer clients that work with me 3, 6, 9 months or whatever, a year sometimes. But then there's these people who just want their messaging or their content strategy, or they want something done, and we are going to do it in a 30-day sprint. And that is compressed time
Mhm.
and a deliverable, a very clear deliverable with, lots of moving parts. And you want that in 30 days. You're going to have to show up for that, and I'm going to have to show up for that, but it's a more expensive thing.
That's your premium offer.
That's my premium offer.
Mhm.
So it's funny, the long range monthly retainer actually becomes the middle offer, but the premium offer is this 30-day sprint. And when I've been talking to people about it, they're just like, if you can do that, that's amazing. I want in on that.
Yeah, because we talked about in right sizing your business, how
Mhm.
many clients could you energetically serve?
Yeah.
At what price point for these quick in and outs? For the retainer, which means you're having an ongoing relationship with them. And like you
Yeah.
said, I love how you described it that you're like carrying them with you all the time because it's
Mhm.
kind of like being a parent in a way. There, even if you're not in front of your kid, you're always thinking about them.
Thinking about
But
them for
then the
sure.
VIP offer was either going to be a day rate or some sort
Mhm.
of a quick thing, but the sprint, you're focused a lot on them and on the deliverables, and it's a premium offer because it's a compressed timeline. These are for
Yeah.
people who want to get it done right. It can't be done in a day. And how many of those did you decide you could do at any given time?
I really can probably do 1 or 2 a month. I
Mm.
haven't quite nailed down all the systems. When I get this is at the very beginning stages. So when I get the systems down, I may be able to do more. The other thing is the right person
Yes.
for this offer has to be they have to be mature in their business, be able to afford it for sure. But more importantly, like, this is not a person who's just like trying to figure out what they want to do. This is a person who's like been in it for a while, doesn't know how to talk about their business, doesn't know how to talk about their expertise. And so I know exactly who it's for, and I know what the messaging has to be. So I'm just building that right
Mhm.
now. And that was just born out of some people who were saying to me, like, I love what you're doing. I need it like yesterday. And then when when I would talk about like a done in a day situation, they love the idea of a done in the day, but because it's the kind of work they're not naturally good at or exhausts them, they knew that it would be just so depleting for them. So I thought maybe a 30-day sprint
Mhm.
is a way to go for somebody like that. So I'm just in the middle of building it, but that's eventually what my offers came out to be. But when you and I had finished, I knew that I had the retainers and the one-off sessions, and I just felt fucking unapologetic about it. And it was like, I don't care if everybody on the planet thinks I'm supposed to scale or I'm supposed to do a digital shop because I have 71 trainings living on my computer that I'm supposed to turn into something else. Like, this is where I am and this is what I want to do. And it felt really, talk about trusting myself and right sizing my business. For me, that's where I was.
I'm definitely going to use this as the 1 minute snippet that everybody's going to get on video. I'm going to post that because truly it's like so many things that you learned during the process. I mean, you came trusting me and you learned, you really did know what you wanted. You just didn't really realize it.
Yeah.
And it was like, I almost thought about it. I don't know if I ever shared this analogy with you. You know how I am with my analogies.
Yeah. You love your
I
analogies.
do. Well, that's the only way I can get anything to stick in my brain, you know.
I get
But I
it.
almost thought about it like we were removing all the excess of all the things that you had done, all the things that you felt obligated to do, all the things that you had paid to learn, all the things that people had hired you for, all the things that you saw everyone else doing, like pulling all the tissues out of a big gift bag.
Mm,
And then what was at
mhm,
the bottom was the actual gift, which was
mhm.
your right sized business energetically, your right size offers, your right size price point, your right size number of clients for each of those offers that you could really picture. And I think another way you trusted yourself was this dynamic of, for example, a lot of people say, find out like voice of customer research, find out what
Mhm.
your ideal client wants, and then make that. Yeah,
Yeah.
but you know what? Not necessarily. If you do only that, you're going to end up doing things that you don't actually really want, but because they want them and they're paying you, you can get really heavy with resentment and obligation. But
Yes.
if you
Yeah.
only create the things that you want to create without testing whether anyone wants them, you're going to be spending a lot of time being broke.
Yep.
So I think you were doing the market research that was necessary and letting things go if they didn't work. But you were also listening to the people that you were attracting and like, okay, these people are already attracted to me. These people already want to work with me. What are they asking me for? And then,
What do they have in common?
yeah. And what would it be like to create an offer that would attract more people like them who wanted more offers like this? So I saw that as being you really were able to utilize your current clients to help craft these offers. I think a lot of times
It's
we're
true.
doing that in isolation. We're coming up with stuff and then it's like, how come nobody wants my shit? It's like because
Well,
you didn't test it and you didn't talk to people and you didn't hear
that's
them.
there's this other thing that's just like a little more subtle addendum that sometimes they don't know what they're looking for and they haven't put the fine point on it yet. So so by the time you and I had wrapped up our work, we got a lot done. I felt more confident. I knew what I wanted. I felt like all of the things that we've talked about, but the one thing I didn't have was the who my person is. And I kept trying to put that person into a demographic,
Yes.
right? Like it's wellness professionals, it's authors, it's academics.
Professionals, but like,
That's where we got
yep.
like professionals. So this funny thing happened that January 2nd, I had to have this droopy eyelid surgery it was plastic surgery. My eyelids had fallen so far that 50% of my vision was gone. So I had this surgery. It got scheduled for January 2nd.
Mhm.
So I can't look at a screen for 3 weeks and I can't do any work. And Diana and I have just done 4 months of like wringing the shit out of my business. And what do I want? And I can't learn anymore. I can't talk to any more people. And so I had to sit and I actually decluttered the hell out of my house because I was physically fine, but I could not look at a screen.
Mm.
And I just sat and let my brain work and relax and work and relax. And I didn't force anything. And I started to see patterns. And this other piece of it was I've had plastic surgery. I look like Frankenstein's
It was
monster
pretty
right now.
scary. I
What?
can validate it was pretty scary.
I was wearing blue lacquer glass. So I looked like Bono. I had like orange glasses on, but I wasn't going to be visible and I wasn't going to be in the spotlight. And I started to think about this idea of the spotlight and all the people I had talked to. You and I kept talking about these professionals who are subject matter experts.
Mhm.
And when I talked to these people, they did not want to be called experts. They have many letters after their name. They have years of experience. They have shit they've created, books and courses, but they don't see themselves as experts.
Mhm.
So I started thinking about these people and I'm like, these people are so smart and they want to make an impact. And yet they don't want to be in the spotlight. They don't like that marketing is about them.
Mhm.
So I started to think about this and my brain just finally like it all gelled. Everything finally came together, but I had to trust that it would. And all the work that we had done, and I knew that it would come together, and it did. And one day it popped into my head, and I'm calling it quiet influence. And it's the power of audience-centric marketing. Because when we can put our audience before us, there's two types of people I've been talking about. There are the here I am people, and those people are awesome and we need them. And they walk into a room and they're like, look, here I am, how awesome I am. We're like, thank God you're here because you're so awesome, right? But then there's all the other people who are like, there you are, look at you, there you are. And I started to think about these people and how that shows up in our relationships in real life and how it shows up in marketing online. And from there, it all just developed into this idea of audience-centric marketing, quiet impact, quiet influence. And I had a 40-minute drive at the tail end of this recovery. And like this whole signature talk just downloaded. So I had my AirPods in and I just hit record on my phone and I just started talking. And it just flowed. And then a framework came out of it to help people actually do this audience-centric marketing. And then I started floating it out there in some groups I'm in, and I just kept getting invited. This is since January 2024. And it's just getting traction. And when I talk to people, there was this other piece of it that I realized. Because I'm an extrovert, I am surrounded by introverts because they are attracted to me because I do the heavy lifting for them. My husband, my son, my best friends, my clients, everybody's an introvert. So during those 3 weeks of quiet, dark time, I just started putting the puzzle together.
You almost had an experience of being an introvert to guide you.
Yes.
You know what jumps out at me from this, Jen, is that, and I've had those downloads where you've been, ideating and iterating and ideating and iterating.
Yes.
And it's all
you're so sick of yourself.
Oh God. It gets frustrating at some point.
Yes.
But then all of a sudden you just get this like download. And I've had that come to me, like an entire program, an entire body of work, an entire marketing strategy, a signature framework, a talk, a book. Like I've had that. And I've also walked away from those downloads when I realized that was fucking awesome, but I'm not going to do it.
I'm not going to use it.
Because I know it will happen again because my brain has the ability to do that. But what's striking about what you just shared is that you needed to get quiet and not allow any more input. By not being able to look at a screen, you literally close the door to your mind. No more incoming information, no more incoming opinions, no more, interviews,
no more courses, nothing.
And it reminds me of the feedback that I've gotten that if you want to create, you need to dial way the frick down on consuming.
Yeah.
You put yourself in a creative space by literally closing your eyes.
And I had no
everything else
idea. It was like divine intervention because I was supposed to have the surgery much earlier in the year, and it just like they couldn't schedule me in. If I had had that surgery when I was supposed to, it would have been right in the middle of me doing those 40 interviews for the authors and the books. It was just like this, you and I were wrapping up. It was January. I had all of January like to just go quiet. And I've heard other people talk about these downloads, and it really has never happened for me so powerfully. But these people that I've heard do it, like they get into deep meditation or they take a retreat I have never been able to quiet my brain enough to do that.
You just had to be temporarily blinded.
Exactly. And the other thing, just like everything came together, like I said, like a puzzle, because I realized all of these introverts, this is how they feel all the time. And there's a lot of marketing out there for introverts, but I'm an extrovert and I feel the same damn way. And I'm not particularly private, but I feel the same damn way in my marketing. Like I don't want to be jazz handsy or center stage or make it about me. And I think a lot of people like me, the there you are type of people, they have been told that they have to learn to love the spotlight in order to even try. And so if you can't do that, then why? Then, I mean, your self-talk is, then why will I bother? Forget it. So everything has just started to gel, and it never would have come if I hadn't done all of that clearing out with you and all of that clarifying, and then trying a couple of different suits on that didn't fit. And then finally, like in January of 2024, it being, this is who I want to help. And I'm telling you, every time I say it to somebody, you know how when you want to talk about your business, but you don't want to be in center stage, you don't want the spotlight on you, people are like, yes, exactly. Do you know how to do that? I'm like, yeah, I have like strategies to actually help you.
The language you're using is so perfect. As you were sharing it, I'm just like, yes, yes, yes. I mean, it just, it's so, I could see the through line of all the tissue that had to be pulled out of the bag. And
Right.
it's like, so it could be revealed to you. And also, I think a really important thing you did was that you were looking at like what group of people.
Yeah.
Is it, healthcare professionals? Is it licensed professionals? Is it therapists? Is it this group? Is it authors? Is it content creators? Is it course creators? We went through all of that.
We did. We talked about
all of that. But it's not how a person earns their living or what their
That's right.
credentials are. It's how they feel about their expertise, their body of work, and how they share it with others. Like the psychographics, right?
Yes. And I just want to add this one little, it feels like a throwaway, but it's important. I thought about, what would it be like to work with authors every single day? What would it be like to work with therapists every single day? I'm like, I think it would be boring for me, but I could work with a therapist and an author and a healer and a coach and a lawyer, right? Like I could work with all of these different people, and it's going to be a little bit different and very customized, and customized is the kind of work I want to do. And so that finally felt like the right fit. So I almost like, I was like, oh, I have to get really narrow in my who, but actually I had to go up just a little bit and get clear on like, what is the through line that they all are feeling or experiencing or want. And that's where it finally landed for me.
So when I go back to what you said you wanted to have 2 to 3 profitable offers. You wanted to streamline your marketing strategy and make a decision about what you were going to continue doing and what you were going to let go of, and how you were going to, what you were going to call yourself. Were you going to call yourself a copy coach? Were you going to call yourself whatever? You clearly accomplished all of those things. But there's one thing we haven't talked about yet in this conversation. Okay. What did you decide to do with the podcast?
I decided to keep the podcast, and I decided to keep the name. So the name of the podcast is Content Creation Made Easy. And even though I'm now calling myself a brand message and content strategist, because I want to work at a higher level, like with people rather than down at the copywriting piece, Content Creation Made Easy is still, it's very searchable. And I had to kind of wrap my head around what I wanted the podcast to do for me.
Yes.
And my marketing strategy. So I have pretty much broken up with Instagram and Facebook. I'm dabbling a little bit on LinkedIn, but like, I don't really enjoy the socials. And the podcast is one of the ways I want to market myself. My email list is how I mostly communicate with people, but being on other people's podcasts is my favorite marketing way to do, because I love these one-to-one conversations. And if I have a podcast, I'm much more likely to be on other people's podcasts, because I can invite them onto mine. And so I really see the podcast as not just a way to get information out, which I really love, and have deep one-to-one conversations, but it also gives me a platform that makes me a little bit more, it's like a little bit more of a valuable space, and I have something to offer.
So what is your next thing? Because what you've accomplished in just a very short few months is, I'm sure, inspiring to many people listening.
Aww.
And I know you're not done. It was such a delight to work with you every single step of the way.
Too.
And I'm wondering, what is the very next thing you are going to be offering, creating, or exploring in your business?
There's this piece of the puzzle for people that's very hard to do on their own, which is to master the voice that they need. Like, I can give them tactical stuff, but there's a guy that I really have been following for a long time named Justin Blackman, and he is a voice. expert, and he has a framework, and the work he has done. I probably followed him for 2 years thinking, no, I don't really need help with teaching people voice. But if I can shortcut helping an expert find his or her voice or their voice, and we can get them sounding like themselves, because I think what happens for subject matter experts is they get online and they see other people's cutesy or quippy or snappy or sassy, and they're like, that doesn't fucking sound like me. I don't know how to talk to sound like myself. Or they are overly professional or overly academic or whatever. That is my next thing that I'm diving into, because I can put that directly into, I can make an offer around just that. So
that sounds perfectly
really
suited to your premium offer, Jen. Like positioning that as your 30-day sprint, because clearly you're not going to knock that out in a one-off. And if you did it on a retainer level, it would draw the process out too long. I think 30 days sounds like that would be such a good fit for that offer.
I think so too. And I'm excited about it. And I'm just wrapping up some of the, so you know how it is when you come up with an idea, there's a million steps. You're like, just, here's my idea. No, you have to like make an opt-in and make the transcripts and blah, blah, blah. Like I'm in the midst of that right now, but it's almost done. So my foundations for this new audience are so close to being done. And now I can think, okay, what is that 30-day sprint offer going to look like? And that program will help me design it.
Well, I'll tell you what, you do not need me as an accountability partner, but I do believe that incentivizing things tends to make them happen quicker. So I'll tell you what, make a public declaration and a promise. As soon as you get it done, I will share it with my people, because I think—
Oh, thank you so much.
Absolutely. I'm also,
awesome.
It's also selfish, because I feel like that's kind of like the, cherry on top is a unique offer that is the culmination of right-sizing your business, clarifying your ideal client, and putting it in a package that feels really good to you to sell and deliver. So I'm all in for that.
Thanks, Diane.
Sure.
And thank you. You were so patient with me at times when I just was so sick of myself, and I was sick of the iterating and sick of the journey with myself. But you were always patient with me, and I would recommend working with Diane if the things that I'm saying and the type of personality that I'm presenting with resonate with you, and you're that person who just wants a partner. Diane could not be better. She is 5-star. I highly recommend. 5 out of 5.
Thank you so much for being here for this incredible client success story interview with my wonderful client, Jen Liddy. And if listening to this has made you think, maybe you need a thought partner too. Maybe you have had enough of the group programs and the courses, or just trying to figure it out all on your own, let me help you. I have launched and run several successful businesses, even with an ADHD brain, and I can help you too. So the way to find out is to book a free consult with me. There's a link in the show notes, and I promise I'm not going to try to sell you anything or convince you of anything. In fact, I will only invite you to become a client if I think I'm the right person for the right reason at the right time, and if you agree. So that sounds good? Book a consult with me. It will be some of the most impactful minutes you will spend this week. I guarantee it.